or not a new series, but a series I've been doing for a while called Weird Religion. Weird Religion. What made the first Christians weird and why we should be weird today. And we've been exploring this for over a month now, and we are going to look at it through the rest of November, going all the way up into Christmas. If you can believe that, Christmas is not that far away. How many of you have your trees up already? Probably a few of you. I follow some of you on Instagram. I know that you have your trees up already. But we're talking about today a topic that I talk about quite often because I think it's really important and one that we get right, and it's very convoluted in a lot of different things, and it's the idea of worship. The idea of worship. And I call this sermon Worship Without Blood and Smoke. How cool of a title is that, by the way? Worship Without Blood and Smoke. And today we're going to talk about that. What does worship look like without blood and smoke? And the famous Roman statesman Cicero said this. He said, the worship of the gods is to honor and respect them. Honor and respect them. And in the idea of a Greco-Roman in that first century, that in the context to which the early church was born, the main avenue to honor and respect the gods was through sacrifice. Sacrifice. And the religious sacrificial systems of the ancient world was truly a spectacle to experience. It truly was a spectacle to experience. Imagine yourself standing in front of a large temple. We can all imagine what a Greek temple looks like. The bull bellows that's brought up to the sacrificial altar, and it's bellowing its mighty bull voice. The priest stands there with a knife as it flashes, as it then sacrifices the giant bull, and the blood then spills over the altar. The priests then divide the animal into pieces, throwing it on the large pyre of fire that stands next to the altar as it crackles and smokes, as that smell, that fragrance fills the city, and then the plume of smoke that goes towards the heavens. It must have been quite the spectacle that to us moderns probably is very foreign. I doubt any of us in here have seen a sacrifice take place, but maybe you have. It truly was a spectacle to behold. It was a spectacle of blood and smoke. And blood and smoke, if you ever studied the ancient world, if you're ever reading modern historians, it's a favorite phrase that they like to use. A couple of examples. We have Dr. Mary Beard says, Roman religion was blood and smoke. Bulls dragged to the altar, throats cut, entrails sizzling, smoking up towards Jupiter. Another historian, Jorge Rupka, said, at the heart of Roman worship lay blood and smoke. The axe fell, the altar steamed, and the gods were fed by fire. This is how the ancient Greco-Romans and many other cultures honored and respected the gods, was through sacrifice. It truly was a worship through blood and smoke. And this is what worship was. In the ancient world, worship through sacrifice really had three main focuses. And so in order to kind of set the context for what we're going to be talking about, we have to explore what these three main focuses were and how we can contrast them to not only the first Christians, but how we should live today. The three main focuses of the ancient world of sacrificial worship was they had an external focus, they were repetitive, and they were fear-driven. They were external, they were repetitive, and they were fear-driven. So let's walk through these a little bit. The external. Ancient sacrifice was outside the worshiper, never inside. External sacrifice was always outside the worshiper, never inside. An animal, or maybe a sheep, or a bull, or a pig, whatever was being sacrificed, was laid on the altar outside of the temple, where it would then be ceremonially slaughtered at the altar by a priest of that for whatever deity they were sacrificing to. In ancient worship, the animal was changed by being cut into pieces, divided up, burned on the altar. The person bringing the sacrifice never had to change. Never had to change. Even Romans recognized this idea. And there's a later Roman writer named Plutarch who wrote a lot of biographies of ancient people. And he said this, the gods receive the smoke, not the soul. The gods receive the smoke, not the soul. So even Roman writers later are kind of going, this is a system that doesn't require any kind of internal transformation. It's purely an external payment to whichever deity you decide to sacrifice to. It was mainly a transactional type of a system, not a transformational system. You could bring your sacrifice in order to worship and appease the gods, but it required no change of your life whatsoever. Maybe you gave your best bull, and that was really the only thing you had to kind of had this loss from that kind of regard, but there really was no internal change. They brought the perfect, unembellished animal, but left with the same crooked heart. And this was an issue that even the Romans recognized as going, yeah, you can give all the bulls in the world and never actually see change. The second part, it was repetitive. One sacrifice was never enough. Sacrifices were traditionally done regularly in cycles. So if you had a festival or a particular holiday, you would often have many sacrifices on those days. Many of those festivals went weeks long. Every crisis or any type of a war, you would see a huge increase in the sacrifices given. And there were sacrifices every dawn of a new day. Imagine waking up every day, you go grab one of your chickens and you sacrifice it. That was a commonality throughout the ancient world. Some of the great examples that we have, things like Emperor Augustus was said to have sacrificed 300 oxen after one victory, then again the next month. Imagine the spectacle of seeing 300 oxen sacrificed. The smells, the amount of blood, the smoke, it would have been a spectacle to behold. Greek calendars listed hundreds of annual festivals where hundreds of animals were sacrificed throughout the year. There's a great inscription from the island of Kos. It says, if the omens fail, repeat the hecatomb. That just means a sacrifice. Repeat. Just keep going until you get what you need. Just keep trying. You didn't get the right animal this time, maybe try a goat next time. That might give you what you need. And so it was a repetitive cycle. Keep sacrificing until you can finally get the answer that you're looking for, or get the result you're looking for. If you didn't get it right the first time, it's probably your fault. You got to do something else. Bring something else to sacrifice. It was a repetitive motion. One of my favorite lines is from a guy named Lucan. He's writing after a giant Roman battle. It's that tens of thousands of, if not maybe 100,000 men involved in this battle. And each one of them is making a sacrifice. And Lucan observes, he says, the altars reeked with blood and smoke. The gods choked with gore. I mean, the idea of imagine every soldier, every general making a sacrifice, there wouldn't have been much, there just would have been smoke and blood. Trying to somehow give some favor or give some appeasement to some god that will then allow them to have the prosperity or the victory they seek. The altars of worship are nothing more than butcher blocks on a payment plan. That's what they were. Butcher blocks on a payment plan. The next part, it was very fear-driven. Fear-driven. They sacrificed to keep the gods from striking. They sacrificed in order to keep the gods from striking. We discussed some of this in the idea of ritual when we first started this series, but worship was one of the main ways, worship through sacrifice, I should say, was the main way to appease a god. There was very little, if zero, affection towards that god. The idea of saying that you love a god was a bit foreign to the ancient world. It was more about this idea of appeasement. What do I do so I don't make sure that he doesn't strike me dead? And I know a lot of Christians who relate to God that way. What do I do? What can I do? Maybe even the minimum of what I need to do in order so God won't make my life horrible. But this is a very Roman way of thinking. How do I just do enough to appease the gods enough so I can have the life that I so please? They would think of things like experiencing a plague. Maybe sacrifice to Apollo. He might save you. Or you lost a battle. Well, blame the person that neglected the sacrifice to Mars. Afraid of storms at sea? I got a remedy for that. Sacrifice 12 bulls to Neptune and to earn his favor. As the Roman writer Apuleius wrote about the goddess Isis, we sacrifice lest the goddess punish us. We sacrifice lest the goddess punish us. The gods of the Greco-Roman world were cosmic mobsters. Pay the blood or sleep with one eye open was a bit like the culture that they lived in. It was fear-driven, fear-controlling, I guess you could say. The priests were very powerful individuals who could drive change and drive their agendas through fear. What a very powerful tool fear is, isn't it? And that was the way that they worshipped, was through this fear-driven appeasement of their gods. In that world of cosmic mobsters, of external transactions, of repetitive payments and fear-driven devotion, we learn about a God who reveals himself differently than the Greco-Roman world or any of the ancient cultures in existence at this time, or who desires none of these things. Even in the sacrificial systems of the ancient Israelites in the Old Testament, these types of sacrifices as worship were never his true desire. It was never his true desire. Look what he tells the prophet Hosea in Hosea 6:6. For I desire what? Mercy, not sacrifice, and acknowledgement of God rather than burnt offerings. And you could insert there blood and smoke. An acknowledgement of God rather than blood and smoke. God says, if you want to worship me, live a life of loving kindness. Live a life knowing him rather than just doing things for him. He's telling these Israelites who are caught in the system of, hey, we're doing all the right things. We're giving the external means of sacrifice. We're fearing you by giving you our best bulls and goats. We're doing everything that you said that we should do. And he says, you missed the entire point. I desire mercy, not sacrifice. I desire you to acknowledge, to know me rather than blood and smoke. Our God cares more about being kind, faithful, and loving than he does superficial religious worship. And this is the thing that we really need to think about is why do we worship? Why do we do the things that we do? Because when we do things that with the idea of the way of the Greco-Romans, we miss the point. We set ourselves up for a great hypocrisy. And that's exactly what a lot of our kind of our post-Christian culture looks at, is they focus on the hypocrisy as well. You're worshiping God, you're singing to him, you say that you know him, but your lives are not marked with mercy. Your lives are not marked with the acknowledgement of who God really is. This has done a great damage to us as a community. You know, God doesn't care how often you attend church if you're cheating on your spouse. He doesn't want your worship if you're lying and gossiping with people. As the great charismatic colloquialism goes, you speak in tongues, but you gossip in English. My favorite thing I learned in the charismatic church. Our Lord doesn't want your external, repetitive, fear-driven worship. He wants internal, once and for all, love-driven worship. He wants to turn everything about the external on its head. He wants to drive everything from repetition to once and for all, and he wants fear to be replaced with love. Fear to be replaced with love. This is what made the first Christians weird. This is what made the first Christians unique and dangerous in their context, is because they were doing things differently. They were worshiping with a different why. They were fulfilling exactly what the Old Testament God told them about who he was. Paul taught us in Romans 12, verse 2, kind of our key text today. He says, therefore I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy, his loving kindness, to offer your bodies as living sacrifices, holy and pleasing to God. He says, this is true and proper worship. Living sacrifices. Whereas the Roman sacrificial system was more about the death that you brought to the table, Christian sacrifice is more about the life that you bring to the table. A life that is lived out as an offering, holy and pleasing to God. And this has always been something that I think about in my own walk, is how does my life be the sacrifice that is offering and holy and pleasing to God? That's the question we all need to ask ourselves. Is our life an offering that is holy and pleasing to God? So let's break this up into what Christian worship looks like in comparison to the ways of the ancient Greco-Roman world. The first way of Christian worship was it focuses on the internal. Focuses on the internal. It starts in the heart and works its way out through the hands. This is what Christian worship does. It starts in the heart and works its way out through the hands. The altar of sacrifice is now your body. Every thought, every choice, and every habit is now a part of that living sacrifice. It's a bit of a paradox, isn't it? How can you be a sacrifice but also be alive? But you're living in a way that you are going to the altar every single day as you make these choices. John Tyson says this. He says, worship is about aligning the passion, the vision, the values, the attention, your energy and capacities towards that which matters most. This is what he says is what it looks like to worship. This is what it looks like to be a living sacrifice when you align your passion, your vision, your values, attention, your energy, and capacities towards which matters most. And he's kind of framing it in a way of asking us, what are we worshiping or who are we worshiping? What your heart longs for is where you'll find what you worship. What keeps you up at night? What consumes your mind all the time? He says those are the things that you want to worship. If someone followed you around for a week, where would they tell you your time, talent, and treasure is spent? If they just shadowed you around for a week and just going, okay, where do you spend your time? What do you spend your talents doing? Or where do you spend your treasures? And he wrote them all out. I'm not saying we do this. This would be really annoying, but okay, hypothetical. And they gave it to you at the end of the week and said, here is what you worship. What would that look like? Alan Hirsch says this. He says, everyone has a God in the sense that everyone puts something first in one's life. Money, power, prestige, self, career, love, and so forth. There must be something in your life that operates as your source of meaning and strength, your source of meaning and strength. Something that you regard, at least implicitly, as the supreme power of your life. You know, we are not so different than the ancient world. We will try to do as much externally to try to prove to God that we like him in order to get something from him. We are very transactional people. We live in a very transactional culture. This is something we need to be aware of because it leaks into our worship. It leaks into our lives. Because we can do all the external but still be consumed with the love of money. We can still do all the external but pursue power and dominance over one another. We can do all the external things and still pursue prestige. In fact, we can use the vessels of worship in order to gain prestige. I've seen that in the church. We love self, career, all of it. We can even make love itself an idol. This is why the Lord is after your heart first and foremost, because he knows that from the heart, from the internal, comes both life and death. Comes both life and death. The heart in the scriptures is used just like it is today. It's a metaphor for your mind, your will, your emotions, and your desires. He says everything begins in the heart rather than the external. Everything begins in here. Ezekiel 36:26 says this, I will give you a new heart and put a new spirit in you. I'll remove from you your heart of stone and give you a heart of flesh. Speaking of the future, speaking of his people that are to come, that they need a new heart, that the old heart is calloused and solid and needs to be tenderized, needs to be reshaped with a new spirit. When we surrender our lives to Jesus, he changes us from the inside out. And this is the most beautiful thing, but it's also one of the hardest things, but it requires great patience. It takes time, and it takes individual choices over time in order to see those kind of things take effect. It's much easier for people to say, I surrender my life to Jesus. Now, what are all the things I need to do? How many of you are with me on that? Give me the checklist. Give me the things I need to do in order for God to like me again. How can I do a lot of things in order to cover up all the things I used to do yesterday? But Jesus says, no, it takes time to understanding that he's giving you a new heart. He's putting his spirit in you. And it takes a little while to unpack in your life. Some of you are going to experience things right away that are like, whoa, this is amazing. I know guys who were alcoholics for decades They come to know Jesus, and all of a sudden they just have no desire to sip another drink of alcohol. I wish it was that easy for all of us. There are exceptions to the rule sometimes. He places his Holy Spirit within us to guide us, to direct us through our failings and our victories. He removes the callous, stubborn, self-serving hearts and gives us tender, responsive hearts. This is what it looks like to worship internally in ways that our lives may then become living sacrifices, sweet aromas to our God. That when he looks at what the change, when you make choices, when you desire things as he desires, he looks at that and goes, that smells great. The sweet aroma of a living sacrifice. Is your life a sweet aroma to God? No more outsourcing holiness to bulls, goats, and sheep, or to external religious practices. The Spirit moves in, and every morning becomes the altar of worship. Every morning becomes the altar of worship. I think a good prayer every morning is a simple prayer, and something that I think about often. Say, Lord, soften my heart toward people, and take my life as an offering for you today. It's a great way to start. Start your day. Lord, soften my heart towards people. Because people are hard to live around. I don't know if you've realized that or not. Soften my heart towards people. Don't give me the cold, calloused heart of stone. Lord, don't let me live in this type of hypocrisy where I say one thing and do another. Where I say uplifting encouragement words, but behind someone's back, I'm hypercritical. Without any charity. These are not signs of a tenderized heart. These are cold, hard hearts that we need the Lord to soften, to replace with something new. Lord, take my life as an offering for you today. Before you give an offering, before you do anything external, recognize that this is my life the offering. Is my life this morning an offering to God? My altar, the altar that you place is your body before the Lord. And it's once and for all. One death ended the cycle. Now we get to live in its echo. One death ended the cycle. Now we get to live in its echo. Christ's single sacrifice finishes the ledger of repetitive sacrifices. And I don't think we need to recognize how incredibly blessed that is. Imagine if I had to come up here every Sunday and sacrifice a goat in front of y'all. I don't know if I would have got into this world. One sacrifice finished the ledger of all repetitive sacrifices. Look at Hebrews 10:10. It says, and by that will we have been made holy through the sacrifice of the body of Jesus Christ once for all. That we have been made holy. We have been made set apart. We have been made in a way special through the sacrifice of the body of Jesus Christ once and for all. Hebrews 9:26, the second part of that, he says, but he has appeared once for all at the culmination of the ages to do away with sin by the sacrifice of himself. So in one aspect, we are made holy through the sacrifice once and for all. Say that. Say, I am holy. I'm holy. I don't believe you. Say it. Have you been? Holy. There you go. I am holy through the blood of the Lamb. Say that. Thank you. Sorry, that wasn't great instruction there. And he appeared once and for all, the culmination of the ages, do away with sin by the sacrifice of himself. Think about to do away with sin. Away with sin. Jesus was the sacrifice to end all sacrifices. Not only did he create a new holy people, fulfilling a holy people, but he also did away with sin. In this echo of Christ's final sacrifice, we then worship out of adoration for the one who died and resurrected. Adoration for the life and death of Jesus. Think about that. When you enter into a place of worship all the time and you're just thinking, boy, you have taken something that was so broken and rebellious against you, that always chooses what its own heart desired, which is often counter to what God's desire was, which is all of us. And he says, you know what? Through that sacrifice, you are now holy. And it's a hard thing to it's a hard thing to receive that sometimes, isn't it? You maybe have a couple of really hard, bad days, and you're like, yeah, I don't feel very holy right now. But it's a reality. It's a truth that we can hold to and look to and go, you're right. Like, I have been made holy through the sacrifice of Jesus. That in his sacrifice, he has done away with sin. And therefore, I can stand and I can worship with great respect and honor and adoration for the one who died and resurrected. To live a life of worship from Christ's once and for all sacrifice is a unique thing. It's different than anything they would have known in the ancient world, in the Greco-Roman world. They wouldn't have understood this. I mean, one sacrifice for all? That breaks every religious system in the ancient world, going back thousands of years, to say that one paid it all. And because of that, we have a kind of a response to our worship. I think the first one is we get to rest. We get to finally rest out of the repetition. I get to go reapply for acceptance every day. We rest in the truth. We rest in the reality of the once and for all sacrifice of Jesus. There's no more, I blew it, so let me go work my way back into God's good graces. That's a thing that we try to do. I blew it, so let me just do a lot of things to try to get back into his favor. I think that way sometimes. There's times where I blow it, I'm just like, well, now I got to do all the good stuff, right? Let me try to equal out here a little bit. That there is no repetitive, it's not going to go get sacrificed again. If that's not enough for you, I don't know whatever will be. Right? The Hebrew author talks about this too. There is not an additional sacrifice to be had. Like if that is not good enough for you, you're going to come up empty every single time. There's no more, I messed up, so I guess God doesn't want me anymore, I'll just walk away. That happens all the time too. Well, I messed up, I got too far, I'll just walk away. From community, from God, why would he ever want me? It's a misunderstanding of the depth of love and grace that is available to all of us. We live a life that recognizes that Jesus' sacrifice will always give you a way back home by grace through faith. It's fully sufficient and never lacking. It's always open and available for us. And I think that's hard because our love often isn't that way, is it? Human love just has a hard time capturing this idea of a loving God that keeps the door open for us all night. It says, you can always find your place of rest with me. And that's a craving. I think every human being is created with is a craving for rest. A craving to see a place that's safe. A craving for a place to go. I just need a place to rest and lay my head down so I have that protection. And that's exactly what Jesus offers us. His forgiveness is a safe place to find rest so that we can keep on going. So rest in the once and for all sacrifice. That is a huge worship to God. That is an internal worship of God, is being able to rest in the once and for all sacrifice. The second advice I have for you is serve without scorekeeping. Serve without scorekeeping. Pagans often sacrifice to earn favor. We serve as an echo of favor already given to us. We serve as an echo of favor already given. Focus on changing your mindset from doing things because you have to doing things because you get to. This is a huge paradigm shift when people get this. When it goes from I'm serving God because I have to serving God because I get to, that is transformational shift in people's lives. Think about this. I remember when my kids were younger, those diaper changes at 2 a.m., brutal, right? Right? Those were hard things, and I think there's definitely that time where you're like, well, I have to do this. But then as you kind of shift your mind, you get to go, I get to change my kids' diapers at 2 a.m. A lot of people don't get that opportunity to change diapers at 2 a.m. It changes you from a place of I have to, this scorekeeping comparison place, into a place of gratitude, doesn't it? Even the hard stuff is a place of gratitude. It's a posture of gratitude rather than complaining. You know, when we scorekeep, we compare and complain, don't we? We compare and complain. And how many of you guys know comparison is the thief of joy? Comparisons are absolutely the thief of joy. And I don't know about you, but I complain a lot. I'm sure a lot of you do too. And I'm never in a good place when I'm complaining. I'm never in a healthy place when I am critical and complaining. Gratitude is our way of understanding that we get to serve rather than we have to serve. We train our brains when we're placed of comparing and complaining to see more problems and solutions, right? We see more problems and solutions. We are less focused and our decision-making skills are compromised. A good friend sent me some information this week about this idea that we can look at the research and science behind complaining and behind the have-to scorekeeping mentality. It actually affects us extremely negatively, emotionally, and I think definitely spiritually. Where in reality, we were created to be vessels of gratitude. Vessels of gratitude. Gratitude strengthens our minds in the same areas that often it will create negative effects, but instead also builds healthier relationships. Because how many of you want to be in community with those who are already critical and complaining and find everything wrong because they're eventually going to find all that stuff about you, right? Or do you want to spend your time with somebody who's deeply grateful for everything God has given them? Grateful for the losses and grateful for even the successes, for the failures and the victories. I think all of us would agree we want to be a people who are grateful, full of the gratitude that God has given us. Worship once and for all means you live in a posture of gratitude towards God's final and perfect sacrifice in all situations. And this is a lot of work, and I'm not talking about the spiritual bypassing that we tend to do, like, you know, when you experience a tragedy and all of a sudden you're just like, I'm fine. Or the joy of the Lord, you know, that. When you read the Psalms, you don't see that type of response, do you? No, I'm not talking about this idea of spiritual bypassing where you just fake gratitude. I'm talking about this idea of actually seeing this idea of the sacrifice of God. Oh man, I've created holy in God's righteousness. He has done away with sin. So why do I let sin continuously try to define me? Why do I let sin continuously try to dictate and rule over my life when in reality the sacrifice has paid it all complete? That allows us to spend more time in gratitude than criticisms and complaining. You guys with me? Okay. The last one is love-driven. We offer ourselves a living sacrifice not out of fear, but because we accept and receive God's love. This is a motivation that flips from fear, the idea of, God, I hope you don't strike me down right now, to love so that I want to serve and obey you. I think it's interesting. I remember talking to some people who meet here during the week. They have some meetings from the city here. And they had a speaker come in one time, and the speaker said, well, you guys are meeting in a church? Am I going to get like struck by lightning if I walk in? Right? You know, there's this real concept of because my life doesn't align with God, he's going to strike me down. How many of you know we'd all be dead if that was the case? Right? No, he wants us to flip from a place of fear, God, don't strike me down, to a place, I love you, a place of receiving and accepting that love. And in response to the worship is that we serve and obey him. Like what Jesus told his disciples, if you love me, you will obey my teachings, you will obey my commandments. And it's a response to a loving God. Look at 1 John 4:19. He says, we love because he first loved us. Our motivation and our source of love is not outside of it is not in us, it's outside of ourselves in the person of Jesus. He loved. Therefore, our response in worship is to love. Jesus demonstrated this through his teachings and his life and what it means to be driven by love. I love this. In Matthew 11:29, one of my favorite verses, he says this, take my yoke upon you and learn from me. He says, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. So often we imagine this God who's ready to smite us or is angry all the time. But look at this. Out of the 7,957 verses, I counted them all this week. Not really. In the New Testament, this is the one place where Jesus says, I'm going to give you direct access to my heart. I'm going to give you direct access to the very core of who I am. This is how he describes himself. Not with wisdom, not with boldness, not with strength, all those things that he is, but that's not how he defines himself. He says, I am gentle and I am humble. That is my heart. If that doesn't just blow your mind about Jesus, I don't know what does. All powerful, all authority. He says, one thing about me, I'm gentle and I'm humble. That's the thing. He's not looking to strike you down for your mistakes. He loves you and wants to meet you with humility and gentleness. Humility and gentleness. In a world where Greco-Roman gods demanded blood to stay calm, our God spilled his blood to calm us and reveal his love for us. There is nothing else in the world like this. Nothing else in the history of people's relationships with divinity that teaches us this. There is only one belief in all of the world that says that their God loved humanity to the point of death rather than humanity demanding their own blood. And one of the most famous verses in Scripture, John 3:16 through 18. I'll just read it for you. For God so loved the world that he gave his one and only Son, that whoever believes in him shall not perish but have eternal life. For God did not send his Son into the world to condemn the world, but to save the world through him. Whoever believes in him is not condemned, but whoever does not believe stands condemned already, because they have not believed in the name of God's one and only Son. Jesus was given to us out of love in order to save us, to restore us, to rebuild us, to renew us, to save us from our own calloused, self-serving hearts, to give us a heart that is tender and loving and merciful and kind, just as his is. A spirit that has then filled us, that seals us for the day of redemption, and then guides us and advocates for us and helps us and directs us into what it looks like to live a life that worships God. Our lives should reflect the same love as our God's, the same heart of gentleness and humility, where then our worship leaks into word and to action. I think the challenge for all of us is, how do we live our lives knowing that we're drenched in his love, recognizing this, so that others desire that love too? When people evaluate our worship, and when I say that, I'm not just talking about a Sunday morning when we're singing and when we're listening to sermons. I'm talking about every single day in that living sacrificial worship where people go, that person is drenched in the love that I desire. That person understands who they are at their core identity because they have a solid once and for all sacrifice. Worship him with your lives and fall into his loving arms and experience wholeness. This is my desire for every person I ever encounter, is that they will fall into the loving arms of Jesus and experience the wholeness that he offers. In a world of brokenness and sin and death and hunger, Jesus fills the wholeness. He is the provider, and he works through his people, the hands and feet of his life.